evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Talk Football. We got Dan and Jesse. How are we all today? Thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate you coming across the video. So, jump right into it. Me and Jesse are going to be discussing Newcastle and their recent takeover, and we're going to discuss what this means for the Premier League, what this means for other teams within the top six. Do we think that they're going to achieve their ultimate goal of top four, competing for the title, winning the Champions League? Are they going to be a new Man City? Are they going to be a new Chelsea? Or are they going to end up somewhere in the middle? So, yeah, we're going to jump right into it, Jesse. Welcome to the show. How are you today, mate?
Good. Always good.
Really good. Fantastic. Brilliant. So, you've done a bit of research. We both have. We've both been very intrigued about what's going on at Newcastle. And before we start, I'd like to say, of all the clubs I think actually deserve some new owners, it was Newcastle. They were very badly mistreated from where they were to begin with in the early 90s in the Premier League, and competing for titles, going head to head with Manchester United, and in the end, going back to the Championship, coming into some mediocrity. Mike Ashley taking them over, not spending any money, going up, going down, never really going anywhere in any shape. So I think they deserve some new owners, and we'll delve into kind of the moral line of the new ownership, the controversy that it's caused. So, Jesse, Newcastle United's new owners, what is the controversy all about for those of us out there who don't know?
Yeah, so, I mean, besides the obvious sports watching facets that we've seen over the past decade, near enough, I don't know if Roman you could necessarily consider someone who is looking to sports watch. I think that he had his own ulterior motives for wanting to distance himself from the Russian government. I think that it was both political, but also a social statement, as well as he wanted to own a football club. But then when you start looking at teams like Man City, teams like PSG, these are clearly institutions, government-led, state-led institutions that want to make a name for themselves and show themselves as more of a contributor to the global commerce and to basically bring their reputation up as not just oil states or sovereign states that typically abuse their people or have abused their people in the past, who have some questionable laws that don't align with the West. They would rather be a part of the West and find a way to be more a part of that with Western people, even if we do work hand in hand with them on a political level. When it comes to the Saudis, and a lot of the stick that they've run into is not to go into the political side because it's not necessary. We all know that even our Western billionaires have their own issues, but they were doing things that they could not breach the what's it called, the fair and proper people.
Yeah, it was a new test that was brought in, wasn't it, to basically offer a sort of gate guard to new owners coming into football, ensuring that they were fit and proper. The test is a fit and proper owners test, which took 18 months for the People's Investment Fund, PIF, who is the owners of Newcastle United. It's interesting. It is very interesting when you say about the fact that there's some motive that's kind of levied at the new ownership and Newcastle, that this is going to be a sort of way of garnering support for a nation which potentially is looking to extend its reach away from its old adage of being just an oil state and trying to group out. There's a number of quite famous sporting situations that are going on at the moment, not just football. One of the most famous right now for any golf fans out there is the LIV golf tournament, which is backed by the Saudi government. And has caused quite a stir in the golf community, as a number of golfers who played on the PGA Tour have now left and joined the LIV Tour, which is run by the Saudi government. So this has caused some problems. So it's not just football as it stands. Boxing as well, another sport that they're trying to get quite heavily involved in, with running big events. Anthony Joshua looks like he could be fighting out there. So with that there, why do you think they chose Newcastle United of all clubs?
I think there's many reasons why you would choose Newcastle. It's steeped in a rich history. It has a very devoted fan base. It's a big club in England. It may not be a global fan base yet, but I think that the Saudis will look at themselves. They'll look at City. They'll look at PSG. They'll look at any club who, I mean, they'll look at Chelsea. They'll recognize that within a 10 to 15-year plan that they can build a global fan base. They also have the fact that they are a state-backed club means that they can find the popularity. When you have a state-run club, you have essentially what it becomes. It becomes a country beloved club. So they'll know that once they take something over for 300 million is about what they went for. I think they went
around about 300, 330. Yeah,
a little bit over 330, or around 330. They know that they're going to be able to get sponsorship deals because the entire Saudi people will become part of that patriotic sort of state that supports that football club. Just to bring this back real quick, because I want to go back to the fair.
Definitely, yeah, of course.
And the main reason that they were not able to do this before was because they had been pirating the television, the actual
BN Sports, wasn't it?
From BN Sports. So that was a dispute that had to be settled before they could take over. The moment that got taken over, I told everyone I knew that we were talking about, and they were like, well, Newcastle, they're not going to get taken. They already got refused. The Saudis aren't going to take over. The moment that agreement got signed, basically saying, look, we're not going to pirate BN Sports anymore and show it in Saudi Arabia as our own official channel. That's the moment I said, okay, now they're going to get passed. So I just want to say that was the major holdup, is that there were plenty of executives in UEFA. I mean, PSG is one of the PSG's
Nasser Al-Khelaifi.
Is one of the heads of UEFA, is on the council there. He is also one of the people heavily, obviously, involved with the Qatar government. And so there were major conflicts of interest there that Newcastle needed to overcome before they could do that. And obviously, Man City did everything in their power. I'm sure United and Liverpool and Chelsea had their say as well, saying we don't want these people involved. But
I mean, we'll just go on to that one because it's quite a famous one once they were owned, and when they were once the ownership had gone through, and there was a moment where there was a vote that took place actually, and 18 teams voted against action, which would basically it was a way of disallowing Newcastle from being able to use its purchasing power for a set amount of time. And that embargo ended for the January transfer window, but only City voted with Newcastle, which was quite telling because, again, it was their ownerships are incredibly similar, shall we say. They're both incredibly similar. And it will be quite interesting to see how that goes on going forward as to whether or not that more scrutiny will come upon both City and Newcastle. With the recent incidents that have gone on with Chelsea, the ownerships from kind of very closely linked government sources as well, and whether or not that might cause some further scrutiny further down the line. But with that, I think you're totally right. I think Newcastle is a big club, always has been. It's got a great stadium. It's got a very loyal fan base. Very recognizable brand with the black and white stripes, well known around the world as a club that people would, identify. It's going to be interesting to see how they're able to get the deals done to help increase that purchasing power, because they have this access to this vast wealth, which is reportedly in excess of £350 billion, which makes every other owner look pretty poor, to be honest with you, in comparison. So, with saying that, do we see a City-style sponsorship sort of system going on, or do you think they'll have to box a little bit more clever going forward with the recent investigation that's actually gone on with City, which is coming to a conclusion?
Yeah, so as far as sponsorships goes, I think we're going to see something very similar to City. Now, I'm not sure how they're going to actually be able to make it work, because City is under intense scrutiny, which is going to hurt, which they seem to have dodged the bullet. They found the loophole. Statute of limitations meant that City was able to avoid it. And I can see them trying to do something similar, but they're going to have to be a lot more clever about the way they do it. What I will say is this. FFP was not an issue for either Chelsea or City, but it is obviously going to be an issue for Newcastle United. When City were taken over in 2008, it took 5 years for them to win the league.
Okay.
In those 5 years, they reported net losses of 510 in excess of 510 million pounds
over the 5 years.
Over the 5 years, which is not possible now. You can't do
No,
that.
it's not.
Under any circumstances, it's not actually possible to do that. So City had a massive advantage in that, and ultimately that's what led them being able to get into these places where then they're winning leagues within 5 years. I'm not saying Newcastle can't do it, but if I were to put money on it between City and Liverpool, they're not going to be. And that's another thing, by the way. A massive component to why City wasn't able to win a league over those 5 years is because you still had United, obviously. You had Chelsea, to a lesser extent, Arsenal, all competing for those places. So you already had more competition. Now who do you have? Now you have City, Liverpool, Tottenham, Chelsea, Arsenal, United, all ahead of you. Now you can even throw in Villa in there. The competition is so much more ravenous. But when it comes to the way they're going to spend, there are some interesting points there. There's some interesting points in how much they can spend.
There certainly is, and I think you're right. I mean, I'll give my sort of view on what I expect from Newcastle United. I actually genuinely think that this is going to be a much longer project than a lot of people are predicting. I have a genuine belief that Newcastle may potentially be aiming to be competing for top 4 in the next 5 years. And if we think of the difference between, as you've just mentioned, City winning the league in the first 5 years, being able to go over FFP, which is no longer possible. You can only have net losses of £150 million carried over into the financial year, meaning that Newcastle's ownership will have to sail very close to the right-hand numbers. They'll only be able to spend money which they actually earn. They're quite lucky in that respect, because I believe you've done some research and we all well know Newcastle never spent any money at all when it came to buying players, or very rarely. So they have a bit of a benefit now that they can thank Mike Ashley, actually, the fans of Newcastle, for not spending, because they're now allowing them to spend money, which is what they did. They spent just short of £100 million in January. And at the time, the transfers that they brought in January felt a little bit scattergun. Now, some of them have worked and some of them haven't. And that was the scattergun effect that I felt that they had. And in respect of that, that would be players like Chris Wood, wasn't it? Who came to. He has flopped. He's been very poor. 25 million. It was a clever signing because it weakened a direct opponent, which was Burnley. They activated the release clause. They brought in players like Bruno Guimaraes, who is a good young talent. He has still got quite a bit of a way to go to be consistent, and there's a lot of energy at the moment around Newcastle. I think you can agree when it comes to the players, the manager. I think people are getting quite excited, and a dose of reality is that there's still a long way to go there. They brought in a great signing in Kieran Trippier. They pay him a very good wage. 250,000 a week is the reported amount, which is fantastic. And for them, it's a great deal because he's on his final stretch of his career. He is a solid, very good quality, international, league-winning player who's going to bring a lot of strength and depth to them. So he was a good signing, and he was unlucky with his injury. They brought Dan Burnbank from Brighton. He was a Newcastle lad. I'm sure he was very, very happy to come to the club there. And he's been solid. He's been good. And there's a few transfers that are lined up, and I think we'll go into those, won't we? But with Newcastle there, I don't believe that they're going to be looking at winning the league in the next decade. I might come back and say I'm wrong. However, there's a lot of very rich clubs in this league. Isn't that right, Jesse? There's a lot of clubs who have a lot of money. Aston Villa's owners are insurmountably rich as well. They're also very, very rich, and they've not been able to climb this said mountain. And I think that's because of the obstacles that are in their way from the traditional top 6 that are all very, very strong right now. So with that, Jesse, what is your view on Newcastle? Where do you see them next season? What do you think their targets are going to be?
I think it's important to just go ahead and go back over this because ultimately the FFP rules state that you're allowed to have 105 million pounds of loss over 3 years. And you pointed out rightfully so that Mike Ashley didn't spend anything. So they're actually 100% in profit on that. Now that's not including sponsorship deals that they can bring in, because the Sports Direct, last time I checked, and this is tentative, but I'm 95% sure this is true. The Sports Direct, that was their main sponsor, front logo on their jersey for the past 2-3 years, was actually just a free ad for Mike Ashley's company, Sports Direct. So they actually weren't getting any revenue from that. So that is your main sponsor on your kit that they've been getting no money for. So
the stadium was named as well.
And the stadium was named as well. So they have multiple of these free ads that are going to be able to be taken up and named into actual profitable annual sponsorship income. Definitely. As well as the 100 million positive net profit that they have. So they actually have a surplus that they're going to be able to spend, which is where it gets a little meaty for the rest of the clubs. It just gives them a good starting off point, really, ultimately. When it comes to actual sponsorships, when we go into transfers and looking at transfers and how much can they actually spend, because people say, well, what about FFP? Will they be able to spend? They will be able to spend, because they're going to be getting those sponsorships. And the fact is, yes, your sponsorships need to scale with the marketability of your club. They do need to scale with how much your club is actually worth, how much viewership you get, the amount of people who actually go to the stadium. But as I said before, those numbers can be fudged somewhat, especially when you're a Saudi-owned club and you can basically say every citizen in Saudi Arabia is watching each one of our games. You could start to manipulate these numbers a little bit. What I think it really comes down to, and I think the future of Newcastle lies in making smart signings. So they can't do what Chelsea did, which is go from, I think they went from an annual wage bill. I don't know if it's a wage bill or transfer budget over 3 years or whatever it was, of like 100 million pounds to 300 in like a year. They won't be able to do that. They won't be able to do what City did, which is record a record of 510 plus million pounds in losses over 5 years. But what they will be able to do is kind of milk that, and if they make smart signings, they'll be able to expedite that process pretty heavily towards getting to where they want to be, which is obviously, I think the first target is Europe, but then top 4 over the next 5 years.
So. Just before we move on to those smart signings and the transfers there, Jesse, I think it's a good point for us to move on to that. Do you think that the other clubs, the well-established teams that are currently in the league with the longer-term ownerships, and I don't just mean Liverpool, City, Manchester United, Arsenal, Tottenham. I also do actually mean the owners of Wolves and the owners of Aston Villa, West Ham. These clubs who are, will be their first competitor. They will be their gatekeeper. Will be looking to keep Newcastle further down the league than they will. Do you think that these clubs will be more aware of this sort of a situation, having seen what's happened at Manchester City, and they will be kind of, no one really knew what to expect from City when they were bought by their owners. It was kind of how's it going to turn out? Do you think that these clubs will be much more kind of aware of what's going to happen and try and do things to prevent this happening?
I think they'll be aware of it. I don't think that they have much power in what's going to happen. I actually think that Newcastle will immediately start shopping in a similar market to teams like Arsenal, teams like Tottenham, even teams like United. At least for this summer, if we don't do things right, they'll be buying in the same market as we do, and you can kind of see that. I know that they were never going to get Nunez, but they were trying to.
They made inquiries. Yes, they made inquiries.
They were at least trying, and I think that they probably have made inquiries about Gabby Jesus. I think they probably made inquiries about me. I don't think Perisic would have been one of them, but I think that when it comes to teams like Wolves and Aston Villa, who you would think would be their direct competitors, even though I'm telling you I don't think they are. I think they're Arsenal Tottenham and United's competitors at this point, at least for this summer. I think that those clubs are just going to have to be smart. Like Villa was. Like Villa
They've done
was.
well.
Who have Villa got?
Bubamar Kamara and Diego Carlos from Sevilla. There's also some talk about them looking to bring in another couple of players. So they're working hard at the moment, Aston Villa. They're spending money, trying to get some signings in through the door. They've already said there's a hands-off for Danny Ings. He's not for sale because I know a couple of clubs are allegedly sniffing around him to take over. And he would be a sensible Premier League signing as a striker for a number of clubs. In terms of his value and how much he probably costs per week. So just talking about the transfers, have you had a look at the kind of players that they're currently linked with? And I know they're very close to a deal for a young man from Reims, Hugo Ekitike, a striker who they wanted in January. And it looks as if though that deal, according to Fabrizio Romano, is very, very close to getting sorted out within the next week.
To be fair, I haven't, but if you can give me a rundown, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. Well, Hugo Ekitike is their current target. Everything else, as it stands right now, when it comes to signings, is sort of in the very earlier stages. This player is someone that they did a lot of groundwork in January. They wanted him, and they couldn't do a deal. I believe it was about £35 million. He's a teenager from Reims. Very well thought of, tall, strong. Will definitely improve Newcastle's attacking line. According to the reports from a number of newspapers in terms of what Newcastle can spend, there is around 60 to 70 million pounds is what Newcastle will be able to spend this summer. Due to obviously not being able to get the sponsorship deals, be able to register those profits, and each every time when they purchase a player, it represents a loss, doesn't it? It goes as an expenditure on their account. So they spent 98, 60 million would take us up to around about the 150 million pounds sort of a mark that was alleged that they had available to spend in a calendar year. So it leaves money for probably one more big signing. Well, say big. It will be big for Newcastle, around 30 odd million pounds. So they're bringing a striker in. They've got a decent defence, got a good midfield. This is where I think we're correct in saying that this is going to take time because they're not going to be able to spend because now players cost more.
I think we're looking at a lot of loan deals.
Yes, that is a brilliant reason. They can work smartly. They brought in the director of football from Brighton, very well thought of. Identified Darwin Núñez, funnily enough, prior to him going to Liverpool last year. So he has a good eye for talent. He seems to know what he's doing. And that was a very clever signing they brought in. They brought Eddie Howe in as a manager. I was questioning as to whether or not Eddie Howe would have been the right manager to bring in for a club who had a relegation fight on their hands. He wasn't the manager I would have thought would have been the initial choice. However, he's done well. He's got some good results, some poor results, but all in all, it was a successful season, and it put Newcastle in a position which they are where they are now, and not in the Championship, because Championship would have been a disaster.
Yeah, I think it was a very intelligent move to bring in Eddie Howe. He plays an attractive style of football. I know. Well, I say it in hindsight. In hindsight, it's a wonderful thing, right?
It is.
But the fact is, if you can get someone like Eddie Howe in, who is a Prem and proven manager, no, he's not the greatest manager. He plays an attacking style of football, but it's not necessarily the thing you want to keep you up. I mean, if you were to take us back, then we would have said, just give it to Sam Allardyce till the end of the season. Something like that. Something stupid. But maybe these people know more than we do. They probably do. And Eddie Howe came in, they backed him, and he got them there. And Eddie Howe is not necessarily a stopgap, but he is probably the right manager to take this group of players if you're going to back him, because they got him in, then they at least backed him, like they got him players.
Yeah.
And now he's able to progress his squad on for one more year, maybe it'll be longer than that. But when it comes to Eddie Howe, the guy, I have a lot of respect for him. I have a lot of respect for the way he wants to play and the way he looks at football. But I think he's probably 18 months. He's an 18-month, 2-year manager for a club like Newcastle who want to get into that upper echelon.
talking of Eddie Howe, just while we're looking here, I know that Eddie Howe wasn't their first choice. I don't know if you know it, Jesse, but whether or not you'd be able to have a look at who Newcastle were originally linked with, the managers that they were trying to bring in at the time, who they had as a target. Because I know Eddie Howe was probably, I think he was at least third choice. Because it was a couple, it was Unai Emery was approached. It was one manager, Unai Emery was approached to take the job, and he turned it down. He didn't want to come to Newcastle from where he was already at Villarreal, playing Champions League football. And then there was one more manager, I believe, at least that they approached who'd also turned it down. So Eddie Howe wasn't the first choice. And that was quite telling in respect of the fact that Eddie Howe and Unai Emery are two very different styles of managers. Unai Emery plays a style of football which is much more defensive, much more controlled, much more less free-flowing, more defensively sound. Where Eddie Howe's style of football, as we said, is a free-flowing, attractive brand of football, which in turn has worked out. So it shows that their sights are set quite high at Newcastle. And this might be down to them whether or not they're looking at testing the water to see who they can attract. Because they seem to have approached a number of quite high-profile managers who some have turned them down. And they have approached a number of quite high-profile players, of which some of them have turned them down. And this is going to be a trial and error, I think, for Newcastle for a couple of reasons. Firstly, to try and convince these players that this is where they want to be. Nowadays, being rich isn't the key to success because every club is rich. They're all rich. They're all very, very rich. They can all pay very good wages. They can all pay quite big salaries. They can all pay big bonuses. They can pay the prices for the transfer fees. It's especially within the Premier League because of that money from overseas, from the deals that they have with sponsorship and stuff. And they've got those kind of things at the moment which can bring in. So with that, my concern when it comes to Newcastle is their pull when it comes to the personal lives of players. I don't know what you think of this, Jesse. I know you don't live in the UK, and Newcastle geographically is quite out on its own when it comes to the rest of the league. It's up in the northeast, relatively quite a cold, wet, windy area of our country. Beautiful place, by the way, to the people of Newcastle. It is. I've been there a number of times. I love it. It's fantastic. Great nightlife, great people, a fantastic atmosphere, and a very passionate bunch of people, very close to my heart. However, I think it would be fair in me saying that it's going to be a struggle to convince players to not go to places like London and Manchester, which are much closer linked to sort of the nightlife, sort of the well-established sort of footballers kind of domains, where their friends, where they're kind of the people they associate would live. And I think I wonder what you think as to whether or not you think that could play a part.
No, definitely. It can definitely play a part. But just so you know, the two managers they approached before, ironically, were Eric Ten Hag and Paulo Fonseca. I think there's something to be said about the transfers. The transfers that they're going for tend to be, I think they're aiming above. They're trying to get people who are above their weight. They're trying to shoot for the stars, and
Yes.
if they land on the moon, that's fine. And I think that's actually a wise strategy. I salute them for doing it. I have absolutely no issue with the club in Newcastle's position, which in 5 years' time, they're going to be able to probably look back at these managers and say, "Hey, why didn't you come here instead of go there?" Like I honestly think that it's not a bad strategy. As you rightfully point out, though, attracting players, like you said, I'm not from the UK, but all I hear is Newcastle's a great night out, but it's just so far north. One strategy that they could have, and is well within their power because it has absolutely nothing to do with player salaries and budget. And by the way, the amount of money that they're allowed to spend has nothing to do with infrastructure, has nothing to do with revamping St. James Stadium, has nothing to do with.
Well, that works for them.
Nothing to do. Exactly. This is what I'm saying. It has nothing to do with improving the stadium. It has nothing to do with improving the infrastructure of the club, the training ground, etc. And what City did when they brought in a lot of the Portuguese, Spanish, South American players was they basically said, "Hey, look, if you want a private helicopter to London, we'll get you it." That was part of the deal. And even I think it was for Aguero and a lot of the South American players, they set up an enclave somewhere in I don't know where it would be like Cheshire or some
Yeah,
somewhere.
in Cheshire, yeah, there's
Yeah.
that's another place, yeah.
So they would have basically they just bought a cul-de-sac of these mansions, and so they kind of had their own little enclave of
Ultra and
oh,
community there, yeah.
exactly. So like there are ways around it. There are definitely
Good.
ways around it, especially for people who have more money than God.
Yeah.
So it's like there
So
are
they'll have
ways
to be
around
quite creative then, won't they?
it. Yeah,
Because I think
exactly.
that's one of the biggest sides is to be a London club. As a Liverpool fan, I've become victim of it, and I'm pretty sure United has as well when it comes to being in contention for a player with a London club. That is a pull. It is a drag. That to live in London, the families of these players, the wives, the girlfriends, the children, living in London represents a very big positive when it comes to opportunities, things to do when they're not playing football, which is something which some people don't realise that footballers have a lot of free time, and I mean a lot. They train 10 till 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The rest of the day is theirs. Go to the gym, don't have to, go and do whatever. They can do what they like. And Newcastle has plenty to do. However, just like Liverpool, it doesn't have as much to do as in comparison to somewhere like London, where something is always happening. So I think that'll be interesting when it comes to not just convincing the players to come, but convincing the families, which is sometimes more important with certain players, actually convincing brothers, sisters, mums, dads, girlfriends that this is the place that they want to live for the next 4 or 5 years of their contract. Because ultimately, they don't care who their loved one plays for. They just want to know that they have a comfortable lifestyle when it comes to day-to-day life like everybody else does. So that will be an interesting obstacle for them to overcome. I think that they're boxing very clever now. I think they're going to test the water almost every opportunity when it comes to players. I think they're going to inquire about everybody. If Liverpool are interested, if Man United are interested, if City are interested, guess who's going to be there? It'll be Newcastle. They will be there every single time, and they'll be like this. We're here.
Yep. They'll throw their hat in the ring every chance they
Yeah.
get. And they have a
something will work.
They have a very, very real chance of getting players out of these clubs, especially if they see someone that they want.
Yeah.
And the clubs, the bigger clubs, bigger clubs, they are bigger clubs at this point in time, but they may not be in a few years, don't pursue as persistently as they do. Sometimes players just need to feel like they're loved.
Yes.
This is just an interesting note here. I have it written down, so just give me 2 seconds. But
Yeah.
when it comes to marketability, because of the current situation actually left him, Newcastle are looking at an annual commercial income on par with Arsenal, around 147 million pounds. I think Newcastle, given their current state and the amount of money that they're going to bring in from the shirt sponsor, the stadium sponsor, as well as the 100
Arsenal's income.
just 1 second, because the additional 100 million that actually has them in net profits. Arsenal's annual income is 147 million. Newcastle's is estimated, and it's probably accurate. This comes from the Athletic from, I think it was December 31st of last year, so just after they got bought. And I would believe the Athletic, I'll be honest, is around 130. So they're just around Arsenal's market.
Is this the amount of money that they have to spend
annually from sponsorships?
So all right, okay, so for sponsorships as it stands, right? I'm quite surprised by that, actually, that Newcastle are that close to.
It's a bunch of different variables that lead to that, but I think it's the reason why it's hypothetical is because a lot of it comes from the other sponsorships that they're going to be able to add on to that, and these are for like the next 3 years.
Yeah,
and this is also including that 100 million. From my understanding, it's the 100 million that they didn't spend, so they get a massive boost. I mean, 33 million pounds is a massive boost when it comes to these things. So you may be surprised. It's about half of what United has. United's just from sponsorships alone, our income is 279 million. We're the highest. City is the second, I think, around 270, and Liverpool is around 230. But Liverpool's is 230 with the new Nike deal, which I don't think you guys get as much up front, but you guys get something.
Yeah,
of
it's
merchandise.
20% of all sales of clothing, which is unprecedented. Every shirt that's sold, every Nike piece of branding of Liverpool sold, 20% of it goes straight to Liverpool, and that is represents a very good deal.
So you can kind of see where it goes. It's like United obviously has. I mean, we're well known for having that standard, and then it's City, and then I would imagine Liverpool is like here, but they're actually right up here with City, and both City and Liverpool are not far behind. But when it comes to Arsenal, their sponsorship deals are literally half of ours, and Newcastle is catching up to them. Oh, at least over the next 3 years. This is all just predictive, but like I said, it comes from the Athletic, and I wouldn't necessarily doubt it.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty strong information that we got coming from there. So, as I say, that's it's an interesting situation we got going on there, and I know that it comes up with some question that's talked about. I genuinely feel when it comes to anything to do with sponsorships for Newcastle, they're going to come under an incredible amount of scrutiny when it comes to the valuations. They're not. I don't think the other clubs are going to let them get away with trying to rename their stadium and then sponsor it to an amount which is not worth. And they'll look to try and find that market value. I know that there's within the Premier League there's a body that looks at all sponsors to ensure that they are of the correct value, and I think that will be interesting as to how much City's stadium is sponsored for, because that is the Etihad. We have the Emirates with Arsenal. We have a number of stadiums which are named. Mine and your club are not one of those. Liverpool and Old Trafford, and Anfield's and Old Trafford, and long may that forever continue. In my opinion, St James's Park should never been sponsored either. The fans at Newcastle were very, very against the Sports Director Arena. That is not what they wanted it to be called, and it will be interesting actually to see the what happens if it is sponsored and it's renamed. Whether or not the fans will, again, be up in arms and say, no, this is St James's Park, hands off our stadium, don't rename it, this is what it's called. Or, because they're actually happy with the owners that they have now, or in a greater respect, they will be happier with their owners, as to whether or not there won't be that energy. And that will be interesting. It will be very interesting to see that reaction.
I think it'll be very interesting, because I think that will be a barometer for where the club is heading. Do they give up their tradition and move more to the more idealistic side of moving into? Do they kind of not sell their soul? I don't want to.
No, I understand what you mean. It's not that word.
Fan base are not like that. They're not like that. They'll never give up their soul. I know they're incredibly passionate, but it does get to the point where, do you give up St. James's Park, Anfield, Old Trafford for this? For whatever the wealth may come. You're going to get the wealth either way. If you are a Newcastle fan listening to this, I couldn't share the link, unfortunately, so we don't have any live viewers. But like, to be fair, there's absolutely no chance any Geordie would just want to willingly give that up. It is a part of their history. It's a part of their soul. It's who they are. It's one of the hardest stadiums to go to in the country, from my understanding.
Oh, it's a great atmosphere, and again, and that's the side of it that I see, because I looked at the way it was under Mike Ashley, and of course, anything that Mike Ashley tried to do or did, it came under a lot of scrutiny from the fan base. And what I will say is that energy should remain, whether or not your owners spend money. You're a club who spends money, and Manchester United is a club that spends money. They do. They buy players. However, that doesn't always lead to success. It doesn't always lead that you're going down the right path. So it will be interesting to see whether or not that energy remains. What I did see over when it came to social media when the actual club was purchased back in December was an interesting outburst in when people pulled the controversial sides of the PIF, which are owned by the Saudi royal family. They are not directly in charge of Newcastle. We should say that they are not. However, there is strong links. Their chairman is part of the royal family of Saudi Arabia, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So it will be interesting to see, because when I saw is that people were very quick to say, from the fan base of Newcastle to say, well, what about these countries? When it was levied at them that they do things that they shouldn't do, when it was levied to them about the controversies when it comes to LGBT rights, the incidents going on with current wars, the civil war in Yemen, the controversial situation with the media, the controversial situation that happened in Turkey with Jamal Khashoggi. There's a number of quite controversial situations that are going on with Saudi Arabia. And what was quickly met with was a number of people quite heavily defending the Saudis by going, well, what about? Well, what about this? What about what America are doing? What about what Britain are doing? What about what anybody's doing? And this was interesting because whataboutism doesn't help anybody. It's not a strong argument. It's about understanding that if your owners do have some form of controversial side, that the whole purpose of sports washing is to get you to do that. It's to get you to say, well, I'm going to defend them to the hilt because they're my owners. They're my club. They're going to make my club happy. In turn, they're going to make me happy. If my club's successful, I will be happy. And that is the side of it which should be guarded against, massively guarded against, because there's success and then there's success with an asterisk. And it'll be interesting to see how that goes forward. So with that there, Jesse, do you see any sort of further clubs coming in with state ownership? Do you think that we'll see another one? Is there room for another state-owned club in this country?
I think they snuck in the door after Abramovich. Abramovich was not technically Chelsea was not a state-owned club, but the fact was the actual finance and the affiliation did come from an oligarchy that was derived from a tyranny, and a tyranny that was described or derived and birthed from a communist government. So whether you're communist, socialist, it doesn't really matter. Not the same thing, by the way, but it was one of those where the actual political leanings don't necessarily belong in the sport. I don't really hold I won't hold anything against the Saudis, against Qatar. I won't hold anything against the Arab Emirates. I'm not here to say that anything is right or wrong. But even the most, I don't want to say it that way, I think that there's going to be a time or place for everyone to have their personalities checked within this industry. And I think that Abramovich just so happened to be the first instance of that. I don't think that the Glazers are righteous people. I think they're terrible people. I really do. And I think they abuse people. I mean, I know for a fact that they had a lot of real estate and they like to build shopping malls. And so they used to build in Florida. If you don't know anything about Florida, I'll just give you a little bit of a background where they're based in Tampa. Up until about 40 years ago, you couldn't really build south towards Miami because a lot of it was swampland. A lot of it was Everglades. And so you would have a lot of really disenfranchised people who lived in poverty, who lived in trailer parks, and they owned a lot of those properties. And the moment things started moving from the north down through Orlando, which is like Disneyland, down to the south through Tampa, down to Miami, they basically would what's it called? I'm blanking. They kick people out of their homes. What's it called when you kick people
out?
Evict. They would basically just evict these incredibly impoverished people who didn't have any means or anywhere to go. No billionaires are safe, but at the same time, I'm not going to use that as an excuse. It was within legal rights. I think that a lot of things that are happening with the state-owned clubs, whether they be state-owned or related to a state, which the Glazers and FSG and the Cronkies aren't, I think that you're just playing a little bit more of a short game with that because these people actually have blood on their hands. And unfortunately, I think that somewhere down the line it will come to pass. I don't like to use it in football arguments because I don't think that it's right to do in this domain. I think politically, okay, that's fine, but that's not what we're doing in politics. We're not talking politics. We're talking about it's a short-term solution because of the what may come to pass. At the end of the day, Man City came into Manchester and did more for Manchester than the Glazers will ever be able to do.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's interesting when it comes to the current. So that's a good point for us to move on to when it comes to sort of the outlook and the views of the Middle East when it comes to which, in certain respects, fly in the face of current Western culture, especially within the LGBTQI plus communities, which is going to be an interesting situation because we have a World Cup in Qatar this year. The owners of PSG are the royal family of Qatar. The information that's coming out there is being a homosexual in both nations is a crime. It's a crime to be homosexual or engage in homosexual acts in either nations. Now, this will be interesting to see as to how, when we have the further introduction and inclusion matters, which is what's going to happen within the Premier League, which we'll see more and more. We've been taking the knee for discrimination across the world, within racism, within all forms of discrimination. We have Pride Month, which is actually, funnily enough, this month, which has just come up over in the UK. And then we also have the Rainbow Laces situation, which comes on. I'm not sure what week that is, but I believe there's a game day where they have the Rainbow Laces game day for gay rights. When we have recently the first active openly gay footballer in English football, the young man who plays at Blackpool. Now, for me, how would you think that they, as an ownership, could potentially approach this? Because I say this on the first kit that Newcastle are releasing, the home kit is black and white stripes, no surprises there. However, the away kit is remarkably like the Saudi Arabia home kit. It's white with a green badge and a green castor branding. It's almost a carbon copy. And I wonder if that's a little bit of a two fingers up to the Premier League in some way. What do you think of that? What do you make of that? Do you think it's coincidental, or do you think it's on purpose?
No, I actually have someone who knows the Saudi royal family who communicates with them a lot. He's a lawyer for them, and from my understanding, is they don't care what other people do. So I like that. That might be. I mean, it's a little bit of a cheap shot. I didn't actually know that, Dan, but from my understanding, they just don't want it in their own country. They have their own religious beliefs, and they use their own religious beliefs to control their own masses.
Yes,
but outside of that, I mean, they couldn't care less. If they went to Brighton tomorrow and went to a pride parade, it would. They may as well celebrate with them. I don't think that they actually care. I think it is what typically happens, and I do think that even if it's part of a belief system, they understand. I think most of these people are intelligent enough, educated enough, and worldly enough to understand that places across the world understand that. Now, if that's the case and it's meant intentionally, it's in bad taste. Absolutely in bad taste, 110%. But what I will say is that when it comes to these countries, whether it's Saudi Arabia or I'm not going to name any other countries because Saudi Arabia is the standout performer. There are countries in Africa and Asia who have the same sort of issues, like Eastern Asia, that have similar issues. But the fact is, I think it's a local dispute for a lot of those countries. So
they think they'll keep that where they are and allow whatever's within that nation.
They're not going to fight the English masses.
No. But I'm thinking about embracing it. Do you understand what I'm saying about making those efforts?
I think they'll embrace it. Sorry, yeah.
They'll just allow that to they'll just leave that to the club to do its own thing and do what it needs to do. Yeah, I understand that.
Otherwise, they defeat the whole point of their sports washing mission. There's no point sports washing if you're going to try to defy the zeitgeist of a Western country. There's no point in doing it.
That totally makes sense to me. Exactly. It was just an interesting sort of kind of just a side point of kind of where East meets Western kind of culture as to where they are the very kind of hot kind of melting point positions where they are where the two don't cross over. There is no crossover where we cross over when it comes to business. We cross over when it comes to our love of sports. There's a number of things that we are very intrinsically linked together. However, there's some parts of the Western world when it comes to equal rights, when it comes to women's rights, when it comes to those. However, within certain nations, they're lacking behind the equality side of things. So I just wanted to see as to whether or not we think that might become a problem. So just go bring it back to the.
I think they're also trying to make an effort within their own. I think they understand the status quo of the world and where they need to go. Whether they're basing their economy off of the petrodollar and Western gasoline resource, like being able to have that market on lock, whatever it may be. I mean, women were given, and these are not plaudits that I salute. I'm like, okay, cool. You finally did it. Congratulations. But there are signs there. It's like, allowing women to finally drive 2 years ago or whatever it may be. It's like, I think that there's
a long way to go.
There's a long way to go, but I think that things are changing very slowly.
So just bringing it right back into the football. So we've covered that. We've covered the transfers. So next season, what target do you think that they're going to be setting themselves realistically? What do you think their goal will be this season?
European football, 7th or 8th.
7th or 8th. I couldn't argue with that in the slightest. I genuinely think 7th or 8th is their target. However, I don't think they're going to get it.
Why is that?
I don't think they're going to get it because I'll give who I think this next season, who I think the running order is. Liverpool fan, I want us to win the league, so I'm going to put us first. Right. Why not?
Fair enough.
But then it could be Man City. So those two interchangeable. I think that's how it's going to be. Exactly. First and second. I'm going to put Chelsea just as the old guard when it comes to third. Yeah, I'm just going to use Chelsea as the old guard. However, I could see it being Tottenham. Yep. So I'll put those as interchangeable, third and fourth. I don't think that United and Arsenal will break in to that just yet. I think that Arsenal are going to be too far away. I don't think they'll have enough players to actually kind of make that leap into top four next season. I think Tottenham are getting stronger. I think Chelsea will improve. I think they will get some signings done eventually. United are struggling at the moment when it comes to signings, but it looks positive. It looks positive that they're going to get Frankie de Jong. If they get him through the door, other things will get going, and we should see a much improved United next year, to be fair, because it couldn't have got much worse. So that's the top 6, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, the only thing I wanted to add on to that, I think Arsenal and United both go for Europa League. I think you had it right. 5th and 6th, Arsenal, United, even someone else sneaking up in there. But I think both of those two teams go for Europa League. I think that's
so. We have one spot left, don't we? We've got Europa Conference League next season, and we've got a lot of teams for me. So we've got Aston Villa, who are going to be a stronger team next season. Definitely, much stronger team. We have Wolves.
Ooh, I would have said Leicester.
Yeah, well, I'll hold my smoke as it is because I'm not convinced. I think that we might see Brendan Rodgers heading for the door before Christmas. He's one of him and Ralph Hasenhüttl are my 2 favourites to be gone by Christmas. So
I hear that. Yeah.
So we'll see. I think West Ham will be strong next season. I think they will be aiming for Europa League again. They'll be gutted to be in the Europa Conference from where they were. And then I've said Wolves. I think they'll be kind of in and about. They're going to cause problems. I don't think they'll be great, but they'll be in where they should be. And then we have Newcastle, who are there and thereabouts. And then, I mean, could we see with the right signings? Could we see Brighton?
No, and this is why. And this is
go on, mate. You jump in. What do you think?
Because Newcastle just took their DOF. I think that's gonna. I think that's gonna be a massive hit. And I also think if things go downhill quickly, I think that honest to God, I think that they make it through the season. I think Potter makes it through the season, but I think he moves on. I think he moves on after the season if they don't reach targets, because he's too good at this moment for Brighton. And I think that what's his face, who went to Newcastle, their DOF, is too big. He was too much of a reason why they were succeeding. So
he was a clever guy. He
yeah,
really had a good eye for a player, didn't he, to be fair. So I'm not convinced in Newcastle's next year. I'm not convinced that they're going to get European football next season. I'm predicting 10th. That's my prediction for Newcastle. I think they'll finish mid-table. I think the mountain that they have is quite big. And I think they've got a little way to go. I think the teams in and around them and the teams above them are going to get stronger. I don't see anybody really getting any weaker. As they get stronger, I think the teams around them are going to get stronger too. So, as you say, it's going to be down to clever signings, but I think it's going to be maybe 2 or 3 seasons before we see Newcastle in any European competition. That's either the Conference League or Europa League, because if they are to break into that top 6, that additional top 6, and take the Europa League spot, that means that one of the traditional top 6 is out of that league. Then they're in the Conference League. Now that is unacceptable for every one of those teams. It's not an option. For United, for City, for Liverpool, for Arsenal. Arsenal and United are currently the gatekeepers of the Europa League. For either of those teams, that is unacceptable to go behind them.
Can I ask who do you think drops out?
Who do I think drops out?
As of now, you can
as a neutral, it's not you. If it was any, it'd be Arsenal. And I'll say why I think it would be Arsenal if it was any, is only because, as it stands now, they are, just as they were last season, quite thin when it comes to numbers, quite young and naive in comparison to skilled, experienced players in the team, older heads who know how to get the job done, which is what you absolutely need at any team. On any given day, I would put them down potentially as the one who is the weakest and most fragile situation. And I say fragile because any team which is rebuilding from youth is a fragile sort of project, because it can work brilliantly, which it has worked brilliantly, but it's also shown last season for Arsenal that it can also break. It can break very quickly, and it can continue on and on and on and on. So Arsenal would be the team who would drop out right now. And I only say that because I know Manchester United had such a poor season last season. However, I can't see you having another one. I just don't see it. I just genuinely can't see it.
I'm the biggest skeptic when it comes to United. But the fact is, I don't think we see a markedly bad season from any of the players we had last season. The only players who covered themselves in grace, even Fred got injured near the end, but Ronaldo, who didn't even play well most of the season, but he got his goals. Okay, we'll let that slide. And De Gea, I don't see us having that bad of a season. And I understand our transfer window isn't going great right now, but I do think that things are stalling. And if we do end up getting 3 or 4 good targets, so we get a De Jong, a Timber, or De Jong and Anthony, and then a couple other players, I don't think we'll be nearly as bad. Whereas Arsenal, we're looking at them, and there was something that came out today from a major Arsenal source saying, well, we need to sell to buy Gabriel Jesus. You guys need him. And essentially what's coming out is they thought they were going to be shopping on a Champions League budget, and now they're shopping on a Europa League budget. And so it's like, I don't know what to tell. I don't like, I try to back Arsenal fans as much as I can, but this is nope. That's just not. It's just not
sell to buy. I didn't know they had anyone to sell unless it's Nicolas Pepe. I don't think there's anybody in that team that they've got any value behind, and because they don't want to be selling any of the first team. That's for a fact. I think there's only Nicolas Pepe who has any value as a sale right now, unless they want to be getting rid of some of their youth players like Martinelli and Emile Smith-Rowe, which I don't think they have any sort of ideas of doing any of those things. So what's your prediction for them next season? Where do you think they'll finish? Newcastle.
Yeah, no, like I said, I think 7th or 8th. I have them nailed on for top 8 or 9. I want them to push. I want them to at least push. I think Villa has a really good chance. I think Villa has a really good chance of finishing in that 7th. I think West Ham is only going to get stronger.
Yeah.
So I think they're a step behind. But if they make the right purchases, top 10 and like not like oh, you just got top 10. You're top half of the table. Like that was a strong finish.
Like a strong season.
Behind a
Yeah.
strong
Good
8
performances.
Yeah, strong
Steep progress.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
so we see where you're moving.
Yeah,
That's what
I'm top half of the table. I'm saying 10th. I'm saying a realistic, modest 10th for the next season, but a strong sort of performances,
Yeah.
good results, strong games, maybe losing games to the ones that you would expect them to lose. However, having good performances within those games to give them that heart that, do you know what, guys? We're going in the right direction, that this project is, we're becoming competitive. Do you know what? We didn't beat City. We didn't beat Liverpool. We didn't beat Tottenham. We didn't beat Chelsea. However, we made a good show of ourselves. So, yeah, I think that's a great opportunity for us to come up to finish. We've just done an hour. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Jesse, have you got anything to add before we finish, mate?
Nope. If you're a Newcastle fan and you hear this back on playback, be happy, be proud. I see a lot of good things in your future. And like I tried to explain, I think you guys have more to spend. I think as long as you spend it wisely, you guys are going in the right direction. I'm jealous as a United fan. And long may it not continue so that I don't have more pain in my life.
No, I agree. I think they're in a great position. I think they're in a fantastic position. So, yeah, just before we finish, thank you very much for watching. We really appreciate you spending your time. This is a scheduled show, unfortunately, because we've not been able to put the link out. So, if you can put a comment in for us, if you've come and watched, if you can put a like on, we'd really appreciate it. Give us a subscribe if you want to be involved in the channel. You want to have your own say, come and put a message in for us, and we're happy to have you on. So for that, thank you very much for watching Talk Football. I've been Dan and Jesse, and until next time on Wednesday, we will see you later. Have a great day. Take care. See you now. Bye-bye, everyone.